Hey, Aaron France here, and today we're going to take a look at two tools designed to help you create adventures. The first, the Tome of Adventure Design, is a critically acclaimed book by Mythmere Games that recently got a reissue as a second edition. The second tool we'll take a look at is also by Mythmere Games, the Fantasy Adventure Builder. This is a digital companion, but it contains all of the good stuff in the Tome of Adventure Design and brings it to PC, iOS and Android. We'll see how that fares later, but first let's start with the Tome of Adventure Design, which at its core is just a collection of random tables designed to help kickstart the creative process of writing an adventure. The idea of random tables to spark inspiration might sound a bit formulaic, counterintuitive, or repetitive, but the approach to the book is far from that. How does it spark genuine inspiration? Well, let's open up the book and let's take a look. The key to the Tome of Adventure is excess and variety. There are hundreds of tables pitched at different levels and asking different questions. The first chapter is full of tables that answer big questions. What is the mission that the characters are on? Where is the adventure set? What is their motivation? Let's take a quick look at a couple of these tables. I said earlier that one of the keys to this book was excess. Well, this table has 1,000 entries. You can use this for the patron or the quest giver or the target of the adventure. Other tables are more of a two-stage affair, like the villain's plan. You can roll in this table of villainous plans to see what type of plan they might have. Perhaps they want political power or to convert others to their way of thinking, but those are just high-level objectives. The Tome of Adventure Design goes deeper. Each of those high-level objectives has a second table to pull out a more specific type of villainy. The villain doesn't just convert people, no, they're silver-tongued and they're persuading people through their guile and charm. Or maybe they're a moneylender and they're using their power of people's debts to compel them. Of course, not every adventure is constructed in this kind of fact-oriented, top-down fashion. Not everything's about the who, the when, and the why. Creativity is not a straight line, and sometimes rather than starting with the biggest piece of the puzzle, you get inspired by a smaller one. Whilst chapter 1 of this book took a very structured approach, chapter 2, and in fact, the rest of the book is dedicated to a more sort of detailed first, emergent design form of adventure design. Let's quickly peek into chapter 2 and you'll see what I mean by this details first methodology. Chapter 2 is all about unique and interesting monsters. Its tables answer questions like, what does the giant guard? Or why was the construct made? Or how did the undead originally die? Answering these questions won't define your adventure, but it can spark an idea that might lead you to being able to define your adventure yourself. Another neat trick the Tome of Adventure Design has up its sleeve is only present in the newer revised edition that was released in early 2023. Each page has a sidebar full of words or ideas and phrases that have no connection to the content of the page. They have no purpose other than to spark inspiration and to help you combine ideas with the tables present in the book to produce an adventure. So, is the Tome of Adventure Design good? I have to say, it's not a tool I bring out regularly. Not every adventure needs to be written, after all, and sometimes when you are writing an adventure, it just writes itself. That said, I do find the Tome of Adventure Design does a good job of putting new ideas in your head and discouraging you from reusing the same ideas and concepts that you might use regularly. It stops you writing yet another villain seeking revenge or going to that bookseller NPC whenever you need someone to have some knowledge, or just accidentally setting your adventure in a Game of Thrones analogue. I overall like the Tome of Adventure Design. I only have two criticisms, and the first is about form. The book is hefty, and whilst it's fantastically and artfully laid out, I'd hesitate to call it easy to use. It's dense, it's over 500 pages, and it has hundreds of tables, some of which are just pages long. And my second criticism is equally as mild. It's that the Tome of Adventure Design is a fantasy adventure design book that leans into very general or generic specific tropes of fantasy. It has simply built-in assumptions about what monsters you might find and what a battle might be set and what a villain might do. And whilst it's not entirely fair to say that the tropes here are formulaic or even that it's overly tropey, it's that it's not overly innovative. It leans perhaps just a little bit into the classic part of classic fantasy adventure. So with those criticisms in mind, enter then Mythmere Games' latest Kickstarter, the Fantasy Adventure Builder, a digital tool version of the Tome of Adventure Design, which importantly gives users the ability to create and share their own tables. This could theoretically address all of my criticisms. A digital tool, there's no heft with that, and being able to add your own thoughts and flavors and ideas of fantasy to create your own tables should eliminate the idea that this is classical or maybe a little bit tropey. So let's jump to my computer and take a look at how the Steam version of this tool works. Okay, so now we're inside the Fantasy Adventure Builder. The Fantasy Adventure Builder really does two different things. The first is rolling on random tables, and the second is making your own. The first button here, labelled as Adventure Builder, is basically the Tome of Adventure Design, but in digital form. And the innovation, if there is any here, is that rather than having a large number of tables, the contents of those tables have been grouped into indices or indexes, which are rolled together. So rather than rolling just for a villain's plan, I roll on the starting points index here, which includes a lot of the tables from the first chapter of the Tome of Adventure Design that we looked at earlier. Although, interestingly, as far as I can tell, this isn't a one-to-one reproduction of the book. Instead, it's a mix of some of the tables from the book, things like the villain's plan, and some that are new, things like what might be promised to the characters or possible information source. So here, if we basically have a table and then the result of the table beneath it, and so there are lots of tables represented here in this index of starting points. You can click on a result to re-roll that, but if you have these kind of dependent tables, so here we have the villain's plan, which is desecration, and then we've got this kind of dependent table, which is the target of desecration, which is kind of exactly how the villain's going to execute on this plan. And if I re-roll the villain's plan, now becomes destroy community, this table doesn't change with it. So to make this make sense again, I have to re-roll everything. I'll briefly mention that you can hit this keep button here, and it loads that information into your notebook. However, this is, I dare say, a little bit underpolished. It allows you to keep everything you've generated, sure, but there's no way to pull this out and to like copy and paste this into another document, which is what you would want to do if you were using this software regularly. Instead, you have to export it as a PDF or as a TXT file and then copy and paste it from there. Hardly a simple workflow. If you have a result which has multiple tables in it, so if we go to dungeon traps, you can re-roll each of the individual elements of that. If we back out of this though, which uses this back button, which is really difficult to find, then the next two buttons correspond broadly to the other big piece of functionality offered by the Fantasy Adventure Builder, which is the ability to create your own generators and then roll them to generate results. So let's click into the table designer to look at a set of tables that I've put together already. This is kind of like a toy example. Each of these generators corresponds to an index in the screen we just saw. So this would be one index, and these blue elements here would be each of the kind of headings with which we'd roll a result. So clothing and from here would loosely correspond to, this would be clothing and the clothing's result, and then this would be from and then from's result there. That's kind of the structure we're looking at. Each possible result is selected from one of these tables, and I can have, so if we look at clothing, actually let's take a look at from. You can see that these are the four possible results that this table can have, but we can add additional randomness to the results. So I can have some additional randomness on line 1. So let's take a look at clothing, which does that. Here, these square brackets indicate that I want to pull a result out of a dependent table. So I'm going to profession and color are going to be dependent. So I've got a color table, which has got 5 results of its own, and I've got a profession table, which has 4 results of its own. So when I look at clothing here, profession's going to roll on my profession table, and color is going to be pulled out from rolling on my color table. So let's ask for a, so let's take a look and do a test roll here, and you can see that these are then highlighted and can be re-rolled as separate elements. But whereas in from, because it's just one of those 4 very basic options, I'm effectively re-rolling the entire thing. So let's jump back now to the generator functionality. And here you'll find a bunch of DLC that you can purchase. So I've got the Nat1 effects table here. We also have, do I want to continue? Yes. You can see the generator in action. just like it was in the section for adventure design. The only difference in this My Generator section is that you can have DLC and you can see your own generators here. It's worth briefly mentioning that there's this inspirations table on the side here as well, where I can click and that will re-roll the inspiration, and these inspirations can be pulled into your notebook as well. So that's it. That's everything for Fantasy Adventure Builder. Now, if you're underwhelmed by this application that backers paid anywhere from $40 to $80 for, I don't blame you in the slightest. Whilst it doesn't not meet the goals of the Kickstarter campaign, it doesn't really take anything to the next level. Beyond even whether the software is useful, I've been struck by just how awkward it is to use. By day, I'm a software developer, and if this was software I had designed and built, as harsh as it sounds, I just wouldn't be proud of it. There's a guy called Nielsen, who's the grandfather of user experience. He highlights a number of principles for making software usable. Not just making software, but making it software that people are comfortable and find easy to engage with. Fantasy Adventure Builder breaks just about every single principle that he's found makes good working software. For instance, it uses terms that are unfamiliar or jargony. It works in a way that just isn't intuitive to the user. Based off the software, you might think that you save a table once and then you can use it in your generators, but no, you must save a table twice, once to use it in your generators and a second time to be able to edit it again. Simple things around being able to navigate the application. The back button is incredibly difficult to find, and it's placed in a place that wouldn't make sense based off additional software. It also just doesn't intuitively work in the way that software works. It fails to use its well-known shortcuts or really support shortcuts at all. There's also a separate but important point about the accessibility of the software. If you're someone that makes use of screen readers or heavily uses keyboard input because of a disability, this software will not be friendly to you in any way. Each of these things compounds, producing an experience that's sluggish and frustrating and friction heavy, which is the last thing you want when you're being creative. When you're being creative, you want to stay in that creative space rather than feeling like you have to fight your tools. And beyond the experience, no matter how frustrating that might be, things like unlabeled fields, difficult to find buttons, and broken shortcuts aren't what you expect to find in a fairly simple piece of software priced at the $40 price point. If I'm paying that much money, I expect quality. I don't just expect quality, I expect genuine innovation. Before I started writing this video, I was really excited to play with the Fantasy Adventure Builder. Now I want to ask for a refund. The bottom line is, this software is nowhere near worth the $40 price tag. Whilst I would wholeheartedly recommend the Tome of Adventure Design if you were in the market for a tool to help you generate interesting and novel adventures, for Fantasy Adventure Builder, on the other hand, all I can say is I would warn you to stay away. Whilst I admire the idea and the concept, and I understand that the digital tools space right now is incredibly hot in tabletop games, and I do feel like there is potentially a market for something like this, the quality bar needs to go up, and Mythmere Games really needs to find new development partners. And until they do, I'm going to be sticking with my physical edition of the Tome of Adventure Design and jettisoning Fantasy Adventure Builder. That's it. That's everything from me today. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button below. In fact, hit all the buttons below, the notify one and the subscribe button, and I'll catch you next time.